What's going on, guys? JPS back for another video, and today we're going to be reacting to Australia's weird geographical quirks. I think one weird geographical quirk is the fact that Australia, its own continent, in the middle of the ocean, away from the rest of human civilization, that's just your guys' existence, which is kind of a weird geographical quirk. But let's get into the video and see what are some of the actual weird geographical quirks about Australia. What are some weird components of what makes Australia Australia? I don't know. Let's get right into this. I'm very intrigued what's going to be in this. Here we go.
Here are some geographical quirks of Australia that you might not already know. These are the Australian states and territories. Here's Tasmania, the only island state, ringed by ocean and cut off from the rest of the continent by the Bass Strait. Except it's not quite. If we zoom in, we can see that Tasmania and its northern neighbour state Victoria actually share a land border on this tiny and uninhabited island. The maritime border between the two states cuts right across Boundary Islet. This little islet border anomaly arose as the result of surveying errors and misinterpretations when repeatedly carving off sections of the colony of New South Wales into what are today Tasmania and Victoria. Boundary Islet is basically a chunk of rock that sometimes has some seals lounging on it. Speaking of disjointed borders, the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT, was carved out of New South Wales so the federal government could have a territory of its own from which to govern. But they felt strongly about the federal government also having access to a seaport, so instead of making the ACT somewhere on the coast, they just annexed another small territory, the southern peninsula of Jervis Bay. Jervis Bay is a separate territory from the ACT, but when it comes to federal elections, the people of Jervis Bay vote in the electorate of Fenner, which is centred in the ACT. And in terms of geographical quirks of electorates, spare a thought for the people of Norfolk Island, who vote in the ACT electorate of Bean, 1,900 kilometres away. But that isn't even the furthest removed local representation in the country. The electorate of Lingiari encompasses the red centre of Australia, the tropical top end of the Northern Territory, minus the urban areas of Darwin and some of Palmerston, and Christmas Island, which is 2,500 kilometres away. And there are some even more widely distributed pockets of Lingiari. Maybe it needs a video of its own. While we're on the topic of the outback, Australia is home to some really...
So you're telling me those people are voting in the same local elections or something like that? In completely different places. Oh my god. That's just kind of... That doesn't make much sense, but it's okay. We have stupid stuff like that in the United States.
While we're on the topic of the outback, Australia is home to some really large pieces of land that are used for cattle stations. The largest is Anna Creek Station, which is the largest cattle station in the world.
I've heard of this before. I believe we may have watched a video on it. It's like huge. Isn't it owned by one person as well?
It's over 23,000 square kilometres, which is a larger land area than 50 of the world's countries. And it's also true that the country of Brunei used to own a station in Australia that had a larger land area than Brunei itself, although it sold the station in 2018. Back to the state borders now. And while Australian Aboriginal people have of course been living on the land with their own boundaries for tens of thousands of years, when white colonists tried to divide it up...
I like how right as he started talking about Aboriginals, they input like the sad piano music. That's so wild, bro. But this is a great video so far. I feel like this guy has a lot of interesting info. These quirks are quite weird, but I mean, that's the whole point of it. But they're interesting. You know, it's not like weird, like, oh, like I didn't really need to know that. It's like, oh, like I want to know more about that kind of thing. I like the way he's presenting all these quirks.
And while Australian Aboriginal people have of course been living on the land with their own boundaries for tens of thousands of years, when white colonists tried to divide it up, the results were imperfect. Here's the border of Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. Looks like it should be a pretty neat line, right? If we zoom in, we can see that the borders are actually a bit of a mess. Victoria juts out to the northwest. The river boundary moves from being along the southern bank to being in the middle of the river, and the intersection of the three states is in the middle of the river. So why isn't this just a nice line? The 141st meridian was originally surveyed to be the eastern border of South Australia. However, it was incorrectly placed about 3.5 kilometres west of where it actually lies. When the mistake was discovered, New South Wales decided it was fair enough and established the accurate meridian as the border. Victoria kind of went, yeah, no, we like the border where it is, leaving us with this mess today. And Australia has another line that looks straight, but it's actually not. The borders of the Northern Territory, South Australia, and Western Australia. This north-south line cutting across the entire continent looks dead straight, but if we zoom in, we can again see there's a tiny perturbation. This deviation is only 127 metres long, and was of course the result of another surveying error 100 years ago. The border was intended to be approximately on the 129th meridian, so instead of measuring from one end of the continent to the other, 2 points were picked at either end that were pretty close to the meridian, and a north-south line was drawn from each point.
Okay.
Except,
Listen, it feels like a lot of these problems are just, what are they doing when drawing these borders? And also the land surveyors. Like, I don't even know what to say. That obviously you're gonna have problems if the border is drawn incorrectly, and then people live with that, and then everyone's just gonna fight over it of what should be right. Like, that's just asking for trouble. So of course they're gonna end up with some weird borders. Like, what were these land surveyors doing? It must be hard to do that in Australia. I mean, look how much land there is. Not easy, but really.
that were pretty close to the meridian, and a north-south line was drawn from each point.
Okay.
Except, of course, the points were not exactly on the meridian, so the north-south lines didn't match up. Instead of fixing it, they just drew an east-west line to join the two north-south lines up. Could they have fixed it? For sure. But they had actually already agreed not to worry too much about little slip-ups like this. They'd agreed that an academic result was not to be sought after with a high and fanciful degree of accuracy. A century-old way of saying, she'll be right. And just a couple for my fellow Victorians who, like me, thought they had a good mental map of the street.
Yo, I love the emoji on that too. Like, what are y'all even saying? I was in 1923. Yeah. They're just saying it's all good, bro. That's the most Australian way of dealing with that. That's a scholarly Australian quote right there. That is just, listen, the surveyors, they're chill, bro. They just draw the line and life goes on. It's okay.
And just a couple for my fellow Victorians who, like me, thought they had a good mental map of Australia in their head, but maybe I don't. Adelaide is north of Canberra, and Perth is north of Sydney. These realizations actually blew my mind.
That is crazy.
Well, that's it. I hope there was something for everyone in this video. Surprise island land borders, silly electoral boundaries, surveying mistakes, and surprisingly northerly cities. See you next time.
Nice song at the end too. I know that's not drum and bass, but I know Australians love drum and bass. Let me know in the comments if that's any of you guys. I want to get into some more Australian music. I know we did like the top 30 Australian songs reaction pretty recently. I'm trying to react to like some full songs instead of just snippets. So I know there's a ton of songs in the comments on that, and I appreciate you guys for throwing me some recommendations. But yeah, that was Australia's weird geographical quirks. I was not expecting that. It was a bunch of kind of I don't really know how to describe this information. It was just kind of random, but very interesting at the same time, you know, which I didn't expect. We're talking about borders here. Like, I probably would not want to hear about that for any other place. But it's funny how they just drew the line and said, it's okay. It's whatever. So yeah, let me know if you guys knew about any of this stuff before. And also if I need to know who the owner of Anna Creek Station is, because I thought it was this one person, but I'm not quite sure anymore. And yeah, this land just looks, I mean, insane. There's so many movies I watch that have like a clip in the outback of people just being lost. And when I look at this, I can see why they do that. It's just, I don't even know how this place is real. I don't know how you guys are real. It's honestly quite amazing. So Take care of each other and down under, guys. I hope you all are doing well. And if you enjoyed this, hit the like button and hit subscribe. And with that being said, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.